The Goblins are coming to Adelaide Eternal. Are you ready for the deck tech? Here it comes. Oh. This is our deep dive into 10 minutes, quick, rapid fire, understand how to play Goblins in Premodern.
Fantastic. I love tribal decks. Yeah, bring it on.
Let's have a look at the deck list. So, red, green Goblins. Check out this cute little chap. Nice summary right there. It's both got red in the border and green in the art. That's basically the deck. You're going to have mono red for all intents and purposes with a little green splash, and that green splash we'll talk about in a second. Let's talk about the core first. Goblin Lackey, that's your ideal turn one. If you see this opposing on the other side of the field and you don't have your Swords to Plowshares or your Vendetta or something to kill that, then you're probably going to have a bad time, because it's like your opponent just summoned a Black Lotus, and on their turn they're going to use that Black Lotus to cast a War Chief, for example.
Oh my God.
Something that gives creatures haste and is a 2/2, and it discounts all your other spells. So you've just summoned a whole bunch of Mox Rubies that you then cast with your with your creatures. So you can see that the ideal is the Goblin Lackey, but it doesn't always play out that way. So how does it really play out? It's all about having a curve. You've got your curve of your ones, you've got your Goblin Lackey, you've got your Mog Fanatics, you've got Skirk Prospector. Then you've got your twos. Your twos start to become bigger threats. Like Goblin Pile Driver, very, very good at getting out of hand. It attacks as a 3 power, 5 power, 7 power or bigger, and so you have to respect this threat. Then you have cards like Goblin Tinkerer, which just fill out that 2-drop slot. But you'll notice, even though this is kind of a metagame call, and whether you play a couple of them, we play 1, 2 or so on, you're going to have them because you need to answer something like an opposing Phyrexian Dreadnought. But you notice that it jumps there, so it kind of skips that 2-drop slot, and that is because on 2, either you're jumping ahead and you're casting bigger creatures off your Lackey, or you're using your turn 2 to use Rishadan Port as a way to tap down your opponent's mana, then go to your turn and play your 3-drop when you curve into 3. So that's why it's kind of has a bigger density of 3-drops. Now, Gem Palm Incinerator is a very good removal spell on 2, so that's sometimes your other option. So you can go Lackey and then your turn, and then you use your Gem Palm Incinerator cycle to deal 1 damage to your opponent's blocker, and then you can attack with a Lackey and play a 3-drop. So very, very good curve there. So it's all about, whenever you see a tribal deck, if their curve is good, then it's going to be a good deck, which is why you find elves, goblins, and to some degree merfolk, but it's not really as good, tend to be your tribal decks in this format. There are other decks in the format like soldiers and so on, but they don't have a curve like goblins. Goblins very, very efficient and effective and nice curve. So Goblin King, Goblin Matron, and War Chief, these are all excellent 3-drops. And note that your Matron, when you play it, it'll feel a bit lackluster on that turn, but it usually sets up your following turn, because on your following turn, if you've used your Matron to summon to find your ringleader, it means you can out-grind your opponent if you're in a grindy game. Or you've used it to find the Siege Gang Commander, which will drop off the Lackey, which will allow you to go fast. So it really depends. The other one is War Chief, is the one that you often summon with Matron, because it allows you to go fast. So it really depends. Now, the ideal scenario is that your Siege Gang Commander actually comes down on turn 2 with the Lackey. But if you're playing it on turn 5 and you've got any amount of pressure, it's an incredible way to finish the game. Turn 5, play that, and then either you're attacking or you're blocking and making combat hard for your opposing creature deck, or you're just going to your turn and sacrificing a series of goblins over a series of turns because they've found a way to block your offense. Now, if you look in the mana base, you'll see that there's a little bit of a splash here. You've got Carplusan Forest, you've got Wooded Foothills, and a forest. So 9 sources of green. So you can consistently find a green source during the game, but not consistently by turn 2. And that's generally because you want to use your Naturalize for those key things. Like, let's say your opponent plays a Humility, comes down on turn 4, big problem for you. All your creature abilities are switched off, so you can just use that naturalize later on in the game, and then you can take over the game again. The key there is that the mana base, it supports a little splash color, and it supports 7 colorless lands. So this is really important because those colorless lands are what you do to keep your opponent off balance. They're also very useful for getting through counter magic, tapping your opponent's blue source so that on your turn they don't have 2 blue up for their counter spell. And then we go to the sideboard. So in the sideboard, you'll see the green comes to the fore. This is where you've got your naturalized Tranquil Domain. You've even got Caller of the Claw as a way to answer Wrath of God. Your opponent goes, haha, I've got the Wrath of God instead of the Humility, and your creatures are all dead, but afterwards you're going to be casting a whole bunch of bears.
It answers Infest as well. The -2/-2, because that's
Infest is
a good sweeper.
Infest is such a good sweeper. You'll note that, why are we playing naturalizers? Speaking of Infest, think of the Engineered Plague as probably, if your opponent is playing black, they're playing 3 plagues. That's kind of like the generic situation, unless you're, a Goblins deck or something. Your Engineered Plague just answers so much in the format, and it's one of the biggest terrors against Goblins. So Naturalize answers that, Tranquil Domain answers that. It's really, really useful for you to be able to enact your game plan, which involves a fair few 1 toughness creatures, but not always. You can still play around those cards. Note that you've got Pyrokinesis in there for the opposing, say, Goblins deck, and you can systematically kill their War Chief, their Lackey, and their Skirt Prospector, for example. And then you allow yourself to swing, or it stunts their growth. They are not able to curve out as easily. So that's the summary of the red-green deck. Now, there are many different builds of Goblins, and you'll see people have different flex slots, like more Tinkerers instead of Pile Drivers, or splashing other colours. And maybe let's take a look at one of those examples of an alternative build. Let's look at the Black Splash.
All right, let's bring it up.
So the red-black version. Now, we won't go over the shell. The shell is the same, but you'll note that there's a few little changes in the creatures. So, for example, you're playing more Goblin Tinkerers in the red-black version, specifically because you don't have naturalizers. So it's a really good way to keep artifacts under control. Now, what does black give you instead? Well, first of all, you get Terminate instead of Naturalize. Now, this is really a metagame call. Whether your red-black version or your red-green version is better depends on the metagame. If your metagame is full of enchantments, red-green is hands down going to be better, because black doesn't have answers for that easily, aside from Cabal Therapies and, hoping that you name the right card, or having to sacrifice your force in order to answer that key permanent. Now, the black decks are actually much better when you're in a creature-based metagame. They're also really good against the Phyrexian Dreadnought, because you've got more answers for the Dreadnought. You've also got Cabal Therapy to disrupt them from the sideboard. So just like the green version, your splash colours all about the sideboard. Before we talk about the sideboard, there's one other main deck card I want to call attention to, and that is Volrath's Stronghold. So this is one of the draws to playing black, because if you're in a grindy game and you need to win the War of Attrition, then Volrath's Stronghold allows you to keep putting a ringleader back on top, and then you just keep casting your ringleader, and it's just a never-ending source of card advantage.
So good.
So very, very good, hidden away in the land at the cost of some wastelands. So you'll see that the mana base is a little bit more black heavies to allow you to be able to cast these black spells more consistently, but it's at the cost of losing wastelands. So you have to be, you have to be judicious about which type of build is going to be beneficial in your metagame. So looking at the sideboard, this is where it comes to the fore. Cabal Therapy, one of the best discard spells in this format. And then you've also got Drelnu's Crusade. So Drelnu's Crusade, what is this? Well, it's literally your naturalize for Engineered Plague. So it's a like opposing engineered plague. It's the opposite. So you can do that to basically negate an engineered plague, and it sticks around in the battlefield even if they find another one. For example, you can keep building up your Dralnese Crusades. So very nice answer when you don't have access to a naturalize. Now Perish is the other draw card for this. If your metagame is full of green, full of madness or elves, then Perish just does an absolute number on them. So yeah, don't sleep on that card. Now there are a few other choices for flex slots. Black gives you the most amount of flexibility. In green, you kind of have a semi-solved sideboard because the green cards are so good, whereas the black cards are more specific to specific archetypes. So for example, Gloom. Gloom is not in this list, but if you wanted to play it, this is well supported for it. It's a black enchantment that just makes white spells cost more, which is incredibly good. You can also say, if you've got a lot of, let's say, blue decks in the format, so you've got a lot of Stifle Noughts in the format in your local metagame, then play Smother instead of Terminate, because then they can't Pyro Blast or Red Element Blast, Blue Element. You know the one. Blast that counts as red. So Smother is another good replacement for that in the Terminate slot. But this is one of the choices of your splashes. In general, you're going to be splashing an allied color because it's easier to support. I'm sure people have brewed up many different versions of like enemy splashes, like splashing for Swords to Plowshares and Disenchant, using a what's that one called? Battlefield Forge. But remember, it means you have to play like City of Brass and so on. So you have to think about whether you can play an enemy color. Now, what I do want to do is just call attention to the fact that these are not the budget builds. These are the optimal builds for a typical deck in these colors, and both of them clock in around the $1,000 mark. So let's have a look at a version of the build that's not $1,000.
Sounds good.
So this version of the deck has the cheap printings. As you can see, a lot of these cards have been reprinted, which is excellent. And they have different art, some of them. They have different borders. Some of them have future sight borders. So either way, most of them are dirt cheap. Aside from the Lackey, most of these are like 35-cent cards, which is really, really good. Now, look at the price. It is $337. I want to draw your attention to the fact that even the 337, so you're building the optimal build with different arts or different borders, optimal build, $337, technically you can make it cheaper than that. So have a look at the price of Goblin Sharpshooter. Goblin Sharpshooter is $40, right? It's a one-of in the deck. It's a very good one-of, and in certain metagames, it's absolutely the bomb. In other metagames, it's fine. Now, what you can do is you could cut your Goblin Sharpshooter, and you could also cut your Skirk Prospector. Now, Skirk Prospector is one of those cards that is specifically there for curve purposes, played on turn one, but also later on in the game, you're able to do shenanigans between sacrificing and a creature goes to the graveyard, so Sharpshooter untaps, you kill something else, the creature goes to the graveyard, Sharpshooter untaps, sacrifice, and so on. So you're able to just machine gun out. So those two are a combo. You can technically take those two out. You could play more Siege Gang Commander, like a 4th Siege Gang Commander, for example. You could play another Goblin Tinkerer. So there's lots of options you can play in that lot. So if you do want to save $40 or you want to build a kind of transitional deck, then start with this shell and start with a cheaper version and then buy your Sharpshooter or trade into it later. By the same token, your Wooded Foothills. So Wooded Foothills, if you want to invest in a Foothills, it'll serve you well in every format. Fetch lands are, really, really one of the predominant best sources of a good stable mana base, and in this format it's fine because it fetches you a forest or a mountain, and it's only ever basics.
No dual lands, unfortunately.
No dual lands. So,
well, fortunately, because it's a lot cheaper without them.
Exactly. Now, if you were to cut the 4 Wooded Foothills and play, let's say for example, there's a card called Mossfire Valley, and it's just a filter land. It's green-black filter land, taps for green and green-red. Green red. Yeah. So it taps for green red if you funnel one colorless mana into it. So it does what you need it to do, which is cast and naturalize. That's really all you care about. So you can play that, and that card is 50 cents. So you could easily sleeve this up, take $120 off the price. You know, clocking in at $200. Play your Mossfire Valleys, play your play a Siege Game Commander in place of Sharpshooter, and you've got a really good entry into the format. It is a tier 1 deck. And then later down the track, you can move into Wooded Foothills if you want to, and once you invest in them, you'll use them in every other format. I also kind of call your attention to the fact that Call of the Herd, Claw of the Claw, this is kind of your 3-drop flex slot, and in here I've thrown in Call of the Herd instead of Claw of the Claw, because Call of the Claw is like $10 and Call of the Herd is 30 cents, and they do the same thing, which is kind of give you some staying power against decks that keep trading with your creatures. So you can play either of them. They're both commonly sleeved up cards, but that is an option for you if you're on a budget.
Can you imagine that? Elephants and goblins on the battlefield together?
Fighting them.
Yeah.
It's definitely an alliance green red.
Mount. Fantastic.
So that's our deck tech for Goblins. Hope you enjoyed the journey to understanding how the little red men get their attack on and how much they hate blue, like Piledriver does.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So if you want to sleeve the deck up, give it a go at your local metagame. You're going to go well because it is a tier 1 deck, and there are lots of little synergies you can learn deep down inside. So, you know, have a brew, have a play around with it, and let us know how you go.
Fantastic. Thanks for watching, folks. Please like and subscribe. It helps support the channel, and we'll see you in the next video. See ya.
See ya.